Hi, so in this segment, we'll be talking about the supporting cast, the other factors that affect the brain. If you recall in our previous episode, previous video, we talked about how energy is the key thing the brain needs. And it is the organ, probably more than any other organ, that needs energy. It needs energy the most for various things, everything from function to structure, repair, regeneration, making of new cells. Yes, the brain does make new brain cells. And of course, protection, detoxification, cleaning itself up, especially at night. These are all active, high energy requiring processes that the brain must have energy to perform. Now, having said that, uh, and we'll probably do we have another video on the basic nutrient needs the brain needs to generate energy. So in this aspect, we'll be talking about the supporting cast, the different, shall we say, cells and systems, not brain cells now, but other cells and systems that help to support, protect, um, shield, energize, cooperate with the brain cells to help them do what they do, which is primarily nerve cell signaling, connection between different cells, so they can pass information across the two of them, across the two different cells. And I've shown you that picture over and over again. So we're just going to continue with this talk on that topic. So we're going to start with the with the neurons, what the neurons need. Then we're going to kind of like blow out or just pan out and see the big picture, what the brain needs to connect. So here we have the glial cells. Again, the actual word for glial, what glial means is glue cells. So the glial cells are they are more like supporting cells. They don't participate in actual brain cell function, but they help the brain cells do what they need to do. And there are different kinds. We're not going to get into them. However, I will talk about the microglial cells, which are like the specialized immune cells of the brain, which are extremely important for inflammation and for protection. That's why they're called immune cells. Now, they can get triggered under the wrong circumstances. They will get triggered, and they can turn on the brain cells themselves. So it's very important that you keep them not triggered, you keep them happy. And there's a whole book on the microglia. It's called The Angel and the Assassin. It's in my shelf over there. I don't want to get up and get it, but it's called The Angel and the Assassin. It's a fascinating book that talks about the dual nature of the microglia, that they are both angels. They both help to protect the brain, but when you get on the wrong side of them or they get triggered, they can be devastating. They can actually destroy synapses and destroy brain cells if they are triggered in the wrong way. But the glial cells help to support the brain. They do everything from protecting the blood-brain barrier to helping to form those insulating sheets around nerve cells to allow for better conduction and faster transmission of nerve impulses from one cell to the next. They're extremely important. Like we said before, they're about the same number of glial cells as there are neurons. We used to think that there were like 10 times more glial cells, but that has changed. So now it's just the same number, 1 to 1. All right. So now that we've spoken about the glial cells briefly, let's talk about the systems that support the brain. And there are quite a few of them that help to support the brain and help it do what it needs to do. Without the support of these systems, the brain would simply not work. And I think this is one of the mistakes, one of the problems with being hyper specialized. You tend to look at the object that you're working with, whether it's the heart or the liver or the muscles. Specialists tend to look at them in isolation. They don't realize, or they pay lip service to the fact that these organs require the support and cooperation of other systems, more so the brain. I think it's a big mistake that neurologists do not take into account things like the cardiovascular system, gut health, and even things like just the teeth, the health of the teeth and the gums. So there's a lot more. Um, I mean, we focus a lot on genetics. Yes, that's important. But I think we should also focus on on the health of the other systems, which can play a much larger role in the fate of the brain than just focusing on the genetics. So I'm going to go through them in a minute. But if you remember this slide, I talked about how we started treating patients with these 7 aspects in mind. Obviously, energy, blood flow, and the other systems. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But these are the other systems. Nervous system, and the brain is just a part of the nervous system. So you have the spinal cord, the nerves, the autonomic nervous system, and so on and so forth. You've got the cranial nerves. So all these other aspects of the nervous system help to support the brain. We've talked about the glial cells already. Now, the next one is the cardiovascular system, because think about it. Your brain needs nutrients, your brain needs chemicals and hormones. How do they get to the brain? Mainly through the cardiovascular system. So the blood flow has to be optimal. If there's anything that goes wrong with the blood flow, if there's inflammation, atherosclerosis, problems with blood flow within or within the brain, the brain cells in that region that is affected can suffer as a result. The endocrine system obviously refers to the hormones. We're now finding out that things like the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, the sex hormones otherwise called, are extremely important for the protection of the brain. So if the endocrine system is not producing enough of these hormones or not producing them in the right balance, it could have a deleterious, detrimental effect on the brain. As a matter of fact, I think I have a picture here. There you go. So this is kind of like conceptualizes it. I always like diagrams. I prefer looking at diagrams to looking at words, quite frankly. But there you see it. So we talk about the cardiovascular system, we talk about the digestive system, the endocrine system, the immune system. Huge. I remember a story from an Israeli professor, and she was talking about how she found a way to knock out the immune cells or the immune system in the mice, and they sent them to another lab to test their intelligence. And then the lab person calls her back and says, "Why did you send me these stupid idiot mice? They can't learn anything. They are forgetting everything." And then she did not realize. I mean, she did not realize just how important the immune system was to actual brain function and memory, but it is. And so that was an interesting story. And so that just underscores the importance of the immune system. In our work with kids with autism and other shall we say neurodiversity problems, we found out that by addressing the immune system, now think about that, just by giving them immune nutraceuticals or immune supplements and nutrients, we were able to affect and improve their cognition, mood, and behavior just by addressing the immune system. So you would think that those two are not connected. They really are. So a lot to be said about that. The detoxification system, obviously the brain is a very sensitive organ. It's highly complex, it's highly sensitive, and has to be kept clean. And so if you're, I have the picture of the liver here, but the detoxification system includes the kidneys, the lungs, the skin, as well as the liver and other parts of the body. So they have to be in tip-top shape. Obviously, the liver is the most prominent one. It's probably the largest organ in the body, some say. And so sometimes the liver gets overburdened with all the junk that's out there in the air, the food that we eat, the junk food we eat, and in the homes, and so on. And so the liver gets overburdened in dealing with all these toxins, in detoxifying and getting rid of them, that sometimes some things just slip through the cracks and it accumulates over the decades. So that's the issue right there. And of course, the musculoskeletal system, we are just, trust me, we did not learn this in medical school, but we're just beginning to find out that the muscles, contraction of the muscles, and the health of the bones are extremely important to the health of the brain, because they release certain chemicals, including hormones and other growth factors, that help to keep the brain healthy. So simply stressing your muscles on a regular basis, resistance training. Yes, walking is good, but over and above that, having working with some kind of resistance, whether it's bands or lifting weights that are safe, or even just your body weights, just doing squats and so on, that stress the muscles. They are finding out that that is absolutely important to the production of chemicals that help to support the brain. So these are the supporting systems. So if you're a caregiver or you're a professional, a nurse, or whatever, you want to be sure that the person that you're taking care of uh, is having at least a few of these bases covered. And if they are not, you want to talk to their doctor or their neurologist about it, because this would improve the outcomes if they are well taken care of. So I really want to emphasize that. So we talked about the nervous system, the cardiovascular system. I think we've just kind of gone through. Here's the interesting thing. 80% of patients diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease actually exhibit significant vascular pathology, damage to the blood vessels, alongside the typical plaques and tangles. 80%. Think about that. 80%. So if we're treating Alzheimer's disease and we're not taking into account the health of the blood vessels, and you don't really have to do any very elaborate, expensive tests. There's a few simple tests that you can do to ascertain or gauge the health of the blood vessels, and then act accordingly. And I always act accordingly. When I say act accordingly, I always think in terms of nutrients, because that's all we use in our clinic. So we can actually use nutrients to improve the health of the blood vessels. Let me see what else we have here. And here's a picture of the atherosclerosis, when the walls of the arteries begin to get plugged with cholesterol and fat and other things. Here's another one. There's the plaque. And then this is what is normal. Over time, it gets fat depositions, and then eventually becomes a plaque. This happens everywhere, including the brain. The endocrine system. We talked about the sex hormones and estrogen and progesterone. Here's the immune system. We mentioned that, how important that is. Here's the gastrointestinal system. The gut is not just important for digesting food. It's a reservoir of what we term the microbiome, the largest collection of bacteria in the body. Probably outside of the skin also has a lot of bacteria, but the gut has what is known as the microbiome, the gut microbiome. And these bacteria, and they include fungi and viruses and other things as well, but primarily bacteria. As a matter of fact, your poop contains 60% of your poop is actually bacteria. Imagine that. So what happens is that if the bacteria are not the right kinds, so there are quote unquote good and then quote unquote bad bacteria. The good bacteria help the brain, help with inflammation, help you with metabolism, just help make the human being run properly. The bad bacteria obviously do the opposite. And so sometimes there's some imbalance, and usually it's in the wrong direction, where the bad bacteria tend to overpopulate the guts and drive out the good bacteria. When that happens, it can cause everything from problems with sleep, metabolic issues, brain fog, skin issues, and so on. What we know is that as you grow older, the variety, the different kinds of bacteria, that variety begins to shrink, and you don't have as many of the good bacteria as you should. And so one of the things that is very important, in my opinion, is to address the gut issues, whether it's through giving probiotics, which are good bacteria, or giving enzymes to help them digest better. But bacteria help you digest food as well. The point being is that if the gut is not healthy, and the primary thing that helps with gut health is the good bacteria and the right balance of bacteria. If we're not having that, then it's going to affect a lot of other systems, including the brain. So when I'm treating dementia patients or people living with dementia, my apologies. When I'm treating people living with dementia, I always take into account the gut health, because I know that I would be fighting with one hand behind my back if I did not do that. So that's another thing for you to want to take into account. Gut health is so important. And of course, we've mentioned the musculoskeletal system, how the muscles and bones produce chemicals that help to strengthen and support the brain. The detoxification, I don't have the pictures here, but so we have the liver there. And then, so that's it for this video. I hope this helps. We'll be talking about, in the next video, we'll be talking about, let's see now. I saw it just a minute ago. The aging brain. What happens to your brain as it gets older? All right. See you soon and take care.